In reference to the graphic, if we're taking it as like a literal question, the answer would be no for me. Just full disclosure.
Yeah, I have to say that I
you did
probably in that boat too. But we don't have to tell anyone else that. We just keep that between us.
All right, let me know when we're gonna go live.
Okay, sounds good. I will.
All right, cool.
Wait, why are there messages coming in? No, I'm just kidding.
Ruh-roh.
All right. Taking care of this back office business.
That was my nickname in high school.
Back office business?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the physical education department, like it wasn't everywhere.
Giggity.
For my opening little bit of banter, do you know how much it has to suck for like a constitutional conservative or like anyone in the fucking 1776 crowd that is like watching fucking France of all places like spray literal shit at government buildings?
Yeah.
Like you're taking a break from like LARPing online about tarring and feathering politicians after just like years of doing nothing. Not that you should. But then you have to like, so you take you share your tar and feather meme, right? And then you just, you dust off your 1911 to do nothing with it. And then you scroll to something and you see people who are spraying feces at, what look like official buildings, but they're too nice to be in the United States. And then you see that it's fucking France. It's the people that have been like the butt of your jokes just for like decades, and it's fucking French allegedly that are doing this. While like you watched Hong Kong fly an American flag, during their protests. And like, I don't think was there American flags like with the in the French crowd? There couldn't be. There's no way that they would do that. But
yeah, no, I'm guessing that any CIA agents who were there provoking that they would have ensured that wasn't happening.
Yeah. What was the other place that there were protests that they had they were flying the American flag? Oh, Cuba. Yeah. And so, all these places flying the American flag, and then presuming that this is just like that, this is at all legitimate. What's going on there. Imagine knowing that you have to, like, if you were going to go out and you were going to 1776 it here, or pretend to 1776 it here in the States. No one wants to see just me, Matthew. This is ridiculous. That you would have to break out. Yeah, you'd have to pack, your 1911, and you'd have to fold up the stars and stripes, and you have to take a French flag with you. That just has to suck so bad for them.
Fucking frogs.
Yeah, I know, but just like, they did spray literal shit at a government building, so it's way harder than anything that we've done. I was trying to craft that into a tweet, but I couldn't figure it out, so I just was babbling about it.
You should craft that into a tweet.
I'm trying, but
that's a banger.
Yeah, I guess so.
The people who have been synonymous with surrender and retreat are suddenly the ones who are out spraying. When I see a group of people who are, was it the French that recently literally dumped a dump truck full of shit in front of the government? I don't remember if that was France or if that was somewhere in the UK or what. But when I see that, that's when I'm like, I know that this is a legitimate rally of people who are mad about the government. Like this isn't the CIA group that is spraying shit at the French government. I just don't. That doesn't. I don't think there's any precedent for them operating according to those means. That seems like something that's the product of a unique disdain for the entity that it's targeted at.
It's very organic, isn't it?
Indeed. Well played. Welcome to the party, folks. We're, as you can tell from the the title. We are here to drop white pills. We are here for nothing but the most positive and uplifting of talk.
Yeah.
What's
That's
up, everybody
us.
in the chat? We've got we got a lot of our regulars here. Good to see them. Mark, JCP, Cooper. I don't remember if it's David. It's DG Ski. I can't remember if it was David or not. But he's our one of our resident regulars. Jonathan, and I can't pronounce the rest of you guys. Hey, what's up? Reardon is here too. Our resident skeptic. So what's up, everybody? Do us a favor, like the video and share it. We are at, last I saw, let me see here. We are currently at 924 subscribers. We're getting close to that 1,000 line. So we're hopefully gonna have a bit more of an edgy one here today. To kind of up the ante as we approach the 1,000 subscriber mark. So do us a favor, and if you're not subscribed already, hit that subscribe button, and then turn on notifications so you know when we go live. We usually go live every Monday and Thursday at whatever point we feel like meeting up and doing it. I really should not have phrased that way. At whatever point we feel like meeting up and going live. So today, I guess the stuff that's on our mind. There's a really good group chat that we have on Twitter that it's got all of the best people in this community. All the big content creators. Got Popular Liberty and Buck Rebel and Adam Patrick. And
it's not just supporting listeners group, by the way.
Right. No. There's nothing touches the supporting listeners group.
Yeah.
Now, as a reminder, we will actually allow some of the plebs into the supporting listeners group at the if you guys get us to 1,000 subscribers. So if you can get us there, if you aren't, for those of you plebs who are not part of the supporting listeners group, if you aren't, this is your opportunity. You need to put in the work. You have to put in the work. You have to get people subscribing. Get people to subscribe. Get us to 1,000 before before the end of this episode. Before we get this channel removed, we're going to talk about bankers today. That should give you a little hint as to the angle that we're taking.
Say goodbye to that 1,000.
You guys have got to help us get to 1,000. Once you do, we'll pay you for your services by allowing you to join the esteemed ranks of the supporting listeners group. So, anyway, so we got this.
I got a message from someone. I won't say who it is. If he's in the chat, he can own up to it. But it was I think he may have been inebriated, and he was expressing concern that he was kicked out of the supporting listeners group. It's pretty good. There's a whole mess of messages too. It was very entertaining. I was falling asleep as he was messaging me. I was like, dude, you're good. Don't worry about it. But he was. I think he was concerned that he voiced sort of like a dissonant opinion on maybe, I think it might have been the Schmobile swarming episode. And he was a little worried that he was thusly removed from the supporting listeners group.
I know who you're talking about.
It was so fucking random. And I woke up and there was just more. And yeah. He said great. He sent a song he wanted me to listen to as well, which is pretty. Yeah, I was. If
the person who we're talking about here, if that person is in the chat, then we'll leave it up to you whether or not you want to identify yourself.
But please know you gave me a ton of entertainment.
We like that. We like it when you guys entertain us. That's one of the best things about having a I guess I don't want to sound so douchey. One of the best things about having a platform and having a space here to talk to people and have lots of people react. One of the best things is being able to to make people perform. Mm-hmm. And so it'd be like knowing specifically that you're gonna troll someone and say, all right, I'm gonna get a good reaction out of this one, and then deliberately saying something that is going to spark a reaction. That's one of the joys of, like, if trolling is fun for an anonymous person, I got to say it's even more fun for a less than anonymous person.
Well, check this out. Speaking of entertaining, this is a quick little excerpt. I hate man buns and gay dancers, but any guy who admits he did that shit and has questions about and he names a virus that I won't name, aka the rebranded flu, is my boy. I love you and Maddie. So
we love you too, buddy.
Yeah, love you back.
Okay, so genocide. Oh, before we do that, before we talk about genocide, before we hit the genocide subject, we got to tell you guys about this is the best segue ever. We've got to tell you guys about a couple of our favorite people, Carlos and Vanessa Abelar.
It was two really good segues because it was just like, hey, so anyway, genocide. So that was a good one. It was like, no, wait, something that we want you to have positive associations with.
Right. So every time that you think of genocide now, you need to think of Carlos and Vanessa Abelar at Paloma Verde. PalomaVerdeCBD.com. Really, really good CBD products. If you guys are getting CBD products already, then you should start getting them from Paloma Verde. If you guys aren't getting CBD products already, then you should start getting them from Paloma Verde. They've got fantastic stuff. They've got gummies. They've got capsules. They've got, or they call them nano gels, nano soft gels. They've got muscle rubs. They got all kinds of good stuff. And they also, as Amy just pointed out in the chat, they just went public with news that they are expecting. So congratulations to them. They're really, really good people, and we appreciate them a lot. We appreciate them supporting us, and we appreciate you guys supporting them. So go to PalomaVerdeCBD.com, and that's PalomaVerdecBD.com. Use promo code KING, KING, promo code KING, and that'll save you 25% off any order over $75. Very, very good stuff, good products, good people. Thank you for supporting them, and go get yourself some good CBD stuff. All right. Now, genocide. So last night I had a really, really good conversation. I joined Adam Patrick and Aaron from Timeline Earth, who was the first time I've ever met Aaron. We're in the that same group chat together, and so we've been part of conversations together in there. But this was my first time talking to him, and he brings a really interesting perspective to the table. Apparently, this is a major podcast in these circles that I had never even heard of. I don't know how I didn't hear of it at all, but I'm going to have to check it out now because hearing his perspective, he's very much, in a lot of ways, he's further down the road that I'm traveling right now, and he's kind of ahead of me. And so hearing his take on things was very interesting. He's got a unique take. He came to like one of his big influences is Lenin, but he's also a very much a right wing ANCAP, NRX, somewhere in this kind of this vein of we're kind of this blob of distinctly right wing people who we're right wing enough that we realize that our anarcho-capitalism is like LARPing right wing, but not actually right wing. And we kind of don't have a home right now. That's how I feel about the bulk of us in that kind of general vein. So, and then it turns out he's also an Orthodox Christian, which is another little journey that I'm on as well. So it was really interesting talking to him and Adam. We talked about accelerationism, and we talked about capitalism. Those were two very interesting subjects. And they're two things that, so accelerationism, I haven't really thought about prior to this conversation that I had with him. As I said in the conversation, at the end of this conversation here on this show, then go ahead and go over there. Go to Adam Patrick's You're Talking Over Me, and he already posted the episode last night, so you can go and you can listen to our conversation there. So I'm not going to completely like rehabilitate the entire thing. I'm not going to go through the whole thing all over again, but accelerationism is something that I've never really given much thought to, in large part because my instinct when I first hear it is no, I don't want to be associated with people who are in the business of accelerating things, if for no other reason than just self-preservation. Now, it's not that I have a problem with accelerating things per se. It's that I don't know that that's a wise strategic move right now. because I think that if you're going to start accelerating things, you need to have something to accelerate it to or accelerate it toward. You need to have some sort of clear path forward. If your thing is just, this sucks and I want to get it over with, so let's accelerate things. I don't think that that's guaranteed to produce a better outcome than letting things continue as they are. I guess it's I don't have a clear answer for it, but I just don't feel comfortable with that notion. But as I started thinking through it, I realized that part of the uh, uh, interesting conversation going on in the chat. I have to bust your balls a little bit, Reardon. I'm a free thinker and I'm an atheist. Those two things are very difficult to reconcile. Atheism does not lend itself to free thinking. I'll just say that. Maybe we'll discuss some more of that in the future. So Nick Land is the godfather of accelerationism, and Nick Land is very difficult to read. He's not, in my experience, he's not quite Thomas Carlyle, but he definitely is. It takes some work to kind of get through his stuff. He likes to show off his vocabulary. And so one of the problems that we have here, so we've used the analogy of the lifeboat and building a lifeboat. Well, if you're going to accelerate toward the sinking of the ship, then you better have a lifeboat to get into. And the way I see it right now is we don't have that lifeboat. That's where I'm trying to get people focused, is like we need to build a lifeboat. So I don't mind accelerating the sinking of the ship if you've already got a lifeboat and it's just a matter of trying to get people away from it or something. Yeah, something like that. I don't know how far to take the analogy, but what motivates people to build the lifeboat and what motivates people to get into it? Well, it's things getting worse. Yeah, build the ark. If you are going to, if you want more people building your ark and joining you in the ark, then you need the situation to get worse. Because the reason that they're not doing it is because the situation hasn't gotten worse. So if you make the situation worse, then they're more likely to join you in that. So I guess my mind is kind of open on the concept of accelerationism, and I apparently need to read up on it some more. But that was a subject that we talked about yesterday in the conversation, and then in the group chat this morning, we were talking about this idea. Like Aaron posited this idea that, for example, he has people who are in his life, family members and stuff, who are just kind of really basic bitch neo-libs, and his mentality is, I would rather they be communists. I'd rather push them into being outright communist than just have them continue to be these sort of wishy-washy neolibs. And I think part of the motivation there is this desire for formalism, a desire to formalize the relationships between people, to formalize the power structure. Because the power structure has gotten to where it is kind of a feature of bureaucracy. The power structure is just hiding itself in layers of vagaries and kind of cloudiness, and it gets bogged down in legalistic definitions, and it's like forms of forms, and it pretends to be one system, but in practice it's another system. And there's a lot of inertia is a product of a lot of the institutional inertia that we have, is a product of this things just not being explicit. It's not clear that people are who they are. And as I think about this, like right now, looking back, we have this really clear perspective of like the Soviet Union, or the lead up into the Russian Revolution, and so prior to the Soviet Union, and we look back on it now and we're like, well, that was communism. This was like, we have this clear idea of what communism was. And this was the era where these organizations were dedicated to communism, to creating a communist party, all that, yada, yada, yada. And then, in Nazi Germany, these are the Nazis. This was the Nazi party. But when we look at it, we take a perspective of people who are after the events, and we understand the events from the perspective of someone who's after the event. But to understand the perspective of the people who were in it, you didn't have this like understanding of, oh, this is communism, this is the Communist Party, this is what communism does. It was, to that day, relatively kind of not undefined, but there wasn't like this really popular conceptualization of it in the culture, and to the degree that there is today. And I guess I don't really know where I'm going with this beyond just saying that I think we're right in the middle of a very dramatic shift in perspective. And a lot of stuff is about to be cast into extremely sharp relief. And I think that in hindsight, we're going to be looking back at this era differently than we look at it now. And I realize that seems kind of vague and wishy-washy, but I'm also distracted by the chat going on here. People are debating atheism, and I love this. Mac and Liberty says, "Being an evangelical atheist is very 2006 Reddit. Time to move on." That we got to post that up here. Let's get that on the stream for a little bit.
That's pretty good. I don't know if this is going to derail it too much, but like you remember back when we were talking, and I guess the chat is kind of dictating this, but that's okay. You remember back when we were talking about how it would be really fun to get Curtis Yarvin and Mr. Armani to talk to one another. You remember that?
Yeah.
And we were talking about how how it just kind of, for an atheist, it seemed that like Curtis was just like someone who somehow had like a reverence for religion, or was like open to it in some particular, or was somehow like a spiritual person, or whatever. We couldn't quite put our finger on it, but wasn't just like, because I mean, honestly, for me to be able to like tolerate listening to like an atheist kind of takes a lot, usually because most of the atheists are very atheisty, let's say,
Insufferable.
Yeah. And so I did find this because I mean, I miss my friend, if I'm going to be candid. I mean, I don't get to see him that often. And, we got to have a nice lunch. But after that, it was feeling sort of, I was feeling a little bit of a void. The same void. I think the same void that Matthew was talking about when, you kind of accelerate things to like this point where maybe a regime somehow is threatened or abolished and there's nothing to replace it. And that can create some difficult consequences. But luckily, I've got a lot of podcasts that I can look through that will fill the void of my friend Curtis Yarvin, as you guys know him. But anyway, I did find this one where he was talking to an Orthodox priest from Ethiopia, and the guy asked him about his like religious beliefs or whatever. And so obviously he's an atheist, but he said something that's kind of interesting, which was that he's like, I'm not even I'm like a second or third generation atheist. He's like the anti-religious feelings that usually come with like someone who's like a new atheist. He's like, those have just kind of been like washed out. He's like, so I see the benefit of religion. And he's like, and if you told me that that I needed to be part of a new state religion, he's like, I'd applaud that, and I would think that we needed a new state religion for a long time. So I think that might be sort of a differentiation. If you're going to be an atheist, kids, you want to somehow fast forward to the point where you can get rid of all your anti-religious feelings, because that's what sort of clouds the message and gets in the way. So
yeah,
I would be curious as to how that pertains to the chat that's happening right now.
I spent the last week listening to debates on the existence of God, and not because I need to be persuaded, but because this is a hobby of mine when I was, I don't know, anywhere from maybe 10 to 14 years old. I used to listen to debates on the existence of God all the time. Oh, William Lane Craig and Greg Bonson and all that sort of thing. And there's this one really epic one between Greg Bonson and Gordon Stein that I think it was in 1985, and I'll put the link to it in the description later on. It is poor Dr. Stein showed up wholly unprepared for what he found himself in, and there's this one epic point in the middle of it where so Greg Bonson's making the case and making the transcendental argument for the case for the existence of God. That's where someone linked it in the comments of the last one. That's where I was reminded of it. And so he's using the transcendental argument, which is it's a metaphysical argument. So he at its root, every single worldview is circular, and eventually you're going to come around to assuming your own premises, and you can't prove them; they're unprovable. This was part of the what's his name? Gödel's incompleteness theorem. Theorems. One of the things he using set theory, he demonstrated that basically, I'm not a mathematician, so I will probably say something silly, but the essence of it is that to define a set, you have to have another set that defines the set. So to understand a language, you have to have another language to explain that language. And what he did is he used logic, technical logic, to prove that logic can't be the basis of the universe, because logic needs a logic. You have to have a meta logic to explain the logic. This was something that Gödel used to disprove positivism in the 1920s, I think. And yet we live in an era now that is more positivist than ever. And the the transcendental argument for God's existence is an argument like that. And so in other words, if you're going to try to appeal to logic, in essence, you're appealing to the Christian God. You are logic can't be the basis, and logic is something that was born largely out of the Christian tradition. And so in other words, you're not going a layer deep enough when you try to prove the existence of God using laws of logic. So that's what Gordon Stein comes out attempting to do. He says, we can just determine things logically, rationally. You can use reason to determine everything. And then they do the cross-examination thing, and he says, he's asking Greg Bahnsen, the theist. He says, you're talking about metaphysics, and he said, are you saying is this God is like a metaphysical God? And he says, he says, is God material or immaterial? And Bahnsen said he's immaterial. And he said, can you come up with anything else that is immaterial that you might use to prove something? And he says the laws of logic. And right after the guy had been making this big long spiel about how the laws of logic are the God of his universe. His God is laws of logic. And he turned around and he's trying to get him with this gotcha that, you're advocating for something immaterial and you can't prove something that's immaterial. So how are you going to do that? And so, do you have anything else that's immaterial? And he says, yeah, the laws of logic. Laws of logic are immaterial. So if you're coming from this materialist worldview, and you're trying to, which is what atheism fundamentally is. Atheism is fundamentally a materialist worldview. And you're coming to the conversation saying your premise is that there can't be anything like universal immaterial like a God, and you're appealing and as the basis for your position to the immaterial. So that's where it's circular. So the Christian acknowledges at the basis that that fundamentally his argument is circular, and ultimately there's another great one-liner toward the end of the debate where Dr. Stein is asked basically how they know that, like how he knows that the sun's going to rise tomorrow. How can you the Humean problem of induction? How do you know that the future is going to be like the past? You don't have any basis for that belief apart from just assuming most likely it's going to be the case. And Stein gives some answer that's something to the effect of basically we can expect it because that's what's always happened before. So we have very, very strong confidence about it. And so Bahnsen comes back and he says that's the problem, is that atheists live on faith, which is at the root of it. That ultimately you have to have some sort of axiom that you take on faith that you can't prove. And when you attempt to prove it, you ultimately just beg your own question. Christians acknowledge that and they're fully aware of it. Atheists don't want to acknowledge that. They want to presume that their position is one of logic and rationality, and it's not. Ultimately, their position is irrational and illogical because their logic is resting upon illogic. So anyway, so this is where does this tie in? So there's a couple questions up here I want to make sure that I get to because people had some good ones here. But where it ties in here, we had this conversation about capitalism yesterday, and I'm becoming red-pilled on capitalism, I think. And this red pill is not a red pill that most people want to swallow.
Yeah, man.
But
It's just that the free market is going to be the best way to elevate everyone in a society. Am I right, guys? Let me know. Let me know in the chat, Liberty lovers. And remember, hurry up and get us to that 1,000 subscriber mark so we can start accepting you into the private listeners group. And I'm sorry, I totally undercut what Matt was going to say. I think I pretty
I
much
was sitting
nailed
here
it,
trying to
though.
figure out how to mute you because you said Liberty lovers.
I pretty much nailed, I think, what Matt's going to say, but we'll let him just repeat what I said. It's not a big deal. Hey, another day at the office, eh, fellas?
Reardon is quoting Matt Dillahunty, which is funny because I'm in the middle of listening to a debate between Jay Dyer and Matt Dillahunty. That's what I was going to say, is that I've started listening to these debates lately, just kind of for the fun of it, for the entertainment, to try to keep my mind sharp. And listening to Jay Dyer, this Orthodox Christian, debate anybody, he immediately takes every conversation to the transcendental level, to the transcendental argument, and nobody can keep up with himself. Nobody can keep up with him. They will not take themselves to the next level, and they're wholly unprepared for it.
Do you get the idea that it would definitely suck to be his wife? Probably.
I don't think he has one.
Oh,
but yeah, if he did, yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm listening to this series that he's doing now, that Jay Dyer's doing now on. He's going through Tragedy and Hope, the Carol Quigley book, and talking about basically the development of liberalism as a school of thought. And what I'm coming to grips with is that you can't evaluate an ideology or philosophy without considering its history and where it came from, because these ideologies don't just kind of emerge out of the ether. They are derived by a historical circumstances, by people responding to historical circumstances, responding to their incentives. And when you understand where the ideology came from, who brought it forth, who posited it, and what incentives they had to go discover and conceive of it, you understand its implications and its presuppositions. So capitalism, first of all, there's the difference between capitalism and free market. I can appreciate that. I can appreciate that perspective, but I don't think that solves the problem. I think that you get the exact same issue either way. Capitalism is just a step in the process. So ultimately, capitalism and communism are not. We think of these ideologies as standalone, sort of eternal metaphysical conceptions, and they don't exist that way. Time is not this standalone fixed thing from our perception. We're progressing through time. We're moving through time, and these ideologies are being conceived of and brought to reality in the behavior and the decisions of the people who are thinking of them. And they don't exist just in this natural, perpetual, eternal tension with one another. They're constantly in flux. So capitalism and communism are both derivations of liberalism, which is ultimately an atheist materialist ideology. Liberalism was conceived of by people who were trying to take the world that Christianity had given them and trying to reason away God. They were trying to say, okay, well, we've evolved to this point. We've reformed to this point. So how can we go the next step further and just get God out of that? We can't see God around us anywhere. We have our materialist presuppositions. We don't see God. I don't see a God anywhere. And my worldview predisposes me to assuming he's not here. So how can we conceptualize that into a formal system that we can then use to govern our markets? Ultimately, the liberalism as a school of thought was conceived of, was derived, and was applied by the aristocratic and merchant classes as a means of taking power for themselves away from existing established institutions. People weren't just sitting around and just coming up with ideas for the fun of it. There was motivated reasoning happening. You have people where there's a lot of wealth and power on the line, and they're motivated to try to conceive of an ideology, a justification for them taking that wealth and power. So they're working against an enemy. Well, their enemy is monarchies. That's a major. There's the church and monarchies, and so they approach this in a variety of different ways. But ultimately, the goal was to undermine and take down the existing institutions so that the people who were positioned to benefit from it could benefit from it, which was ultimately the merchant class. And this is where central banks were born out of this process as a way of consolidating resources away from monarchs. And then democratic institutions were established as a means of creating a pretext for the people to invest their power into those institutions instead of the monarchical institutions. Once they got power out of the monarchical institutions and into the democratic bureaucratic institutions, then you could begin this process of splitting those and dividing those up. Because ultimately, decentralized power is much easier to take on for people in a position like the merchant class. And then this atomization of the individual was motivated not just by like concern for the welfare of the poor. It was motivated by a desire to generate more customers. Ultimately, if you have, rather than having the family as your fundamental social unit and having people seeing themselves as distinctly tribal and identified with major figures, major figureheads like a king, you break every single person down. You take every single person and say, you are the fundamental economic unit. You have the right to be the king of your own property. Every single one of you needs to be the king of your own property. The problem is all of you are really, really weak kings. So you're going to need somebody to fund your efforts. What do you know? Now, suddenly, the merchant class with their banking institutions have all the customers they could possibly dream of. The creation of the internet is another step in this process, because now you don't just have all of the people in the world, you can create digital personalities as well, and you can monetize those digital personalities. So you're creating more versions of personhood. The more persons that you create, the more customers you have for those who are best positioned to weaponize the means of commerce toward their own end. This is where the ideology, the liberal mentality, this is what it was born out of, was this desire to undermine centralized control of the economy in one area to facilitate centralizing control of the economy in another area. And that's what we're progressing toward. So all of these revolutionary ideologies that were conceived of and turned into violent movements, they're all a product of the aristocratic class that stood to benefit the most from, not the class as a whole, but individuals within the class stood to benefit the most from tearing down the existing structure. Ultimately, anarchists, revolutionaries, are tools of the banking class, because they have to go get financing somewhere. This is what every single political movement does. As soon as you want to start accomplishing something, as soon as you want to start wielding yourself against the world, you have to go get financing from someone. You have to find someone who will pay for you. One thing I just learned today is that Napoleon established the Bank of France, which was a major step forward toward the central banking process. So Napoleon was used as he had financiers. He was taking out loans like crazy. People were financing his efforts. So he wants to consolidate Europe. He wants to go on this process of trying to turn to go from France to massively enlarge France and take create an empire in Europe. And he's being funded by who? By bankers. What do you think that this motivation? This is just like, oh, the world will be better off when we have a centralized empire in Europe. All of these things are all motivated by financial incentives. So go listen to if you haven't read Tragedy and Hope. I read it once before, but I hardly remember anything from it. I'm going back through listening to this and I have no idea how it's like I didn't have the conceptualization for any of this to be relevant before. But now, after the context of the last couple of years of reading and study and thought, now suddenly it's like all of this is massively relevant to me. And it's obvious. Capitalism and communism are dialectic partners that are used to facilitate each other. Ultimately, they're two wings of the same bird, and that bird is flying to the location it's going to fly to, no matter what, no matter who's within the system, it's going to be taken in that direction no matter what. It doesn't matter what your intention is with it. This is the natural outcome of the application of liberalism in whatever form, whether it's capitalism, communism, socialism, libertarianism. All of these systems, all these isms are all downstream of liberalism, and liberalism's ultimate endpoint is global technocracy. That's why liberalism was conceived as an ideology in the first place, was because it's an ideology that is amenable toward global technocracy. And we're in the process of I guess it's really centuries, but I was going to say multi-generational effort to build and create that global technocracy. And the reason why it continues, it doesn't have to be, you wouldn't even need all of these. Yeah, capitalism is a Marxist term. Marx conceived of capitalism. He coined the term, but you wouldn't even need the conspiracy to be written down anywhere for it to sustain itself across generations. You just have to have people in a position to be incentivized to participate as if there is a conspiracy, and there is. Each new generation that comes into these positions within the merchant class, is maybe the broadest term that you could use for describing the corporate overlords and the banks and that whole cabal. I would just consider it the merchant class. The people who are born up into that are all motivated, incentivized on an individual level to participate in the perpetuation of that system. The system is set up to use people within it. The people don't use the system. The system uses the people to sustain itself. It's a machine. Liberalism is a machine designed to use people's natural incentives to partake in it to create a global technocracy, to create the panopticon. And we're reaching a point where we have we're accelerating. So maybe this is your accelerationism. We are accelerating now. We're starting to reach where things are starting to, I don't know if exponentiate. Just because this is kind of as far as I can understand it, this is just the natural outworking of the system. Once it's been set in motion, eventually, as it is based on technology, and the technology has been hockey sticking, so the system itself and its means of achieving global control is eventually going to hockey stick as well. And I don't see any way that it doesn't happen. There is no way. There's nothing you can do to stop it, because the system is set up to capitalize on people trying to stop it. The system is set up to weaponize people trying to stop it. And you're never going to get mass people buying out of the system. You're not going to get it en masse. You're going to get localized incidences of that. To me, this means that it's inevitable, that it's going to happen. Do you have any thoughts on this, Stephen?
Oh, it's going to happen.
So then the question is, when it happens, how will the genocide be perpetrated?
Yay. Self-inflicted. Next. Just kidding. Don't worry about it.
What I mean is the genocide is inevitable. every single one of these kinds of incidences, every empire is built upon genocide. The genocide is happening already. It's been happening for generations. The question is the genocide going to be slow or fast? Is the genocide going to be, gas chambers, or is the genocide going to be slowly poisoning you to death? For the latter, it's been happening. This has been happening for decades now, through food, water, air,
just ask the frogs, man.
electronically,
Okay now.
electromagnetically. All of these things have been well documented at this point, that we are being slowly genocided and have been for a long time. It's just that the genocide takes years to take place. But as I think about this, maintaining a global police state is extremely expensive. It's extremely costly. We talked about this in the conversation last night, that it has to. The reason that most police states fall apart is because it's so costly to sustain it. But that's what technological development is. Technological development is lowering the cost of maintaining a police state. And one of the best ways to maintain the police state at the lowest possible cost is for the people being policed to police themselves, to create the circumstances where they put themselves where you want them to be. Then you don't necessarily need all the institutional power. You just need to be able to control their minds. Mass mind control is much cheaper than a mass police state. If you accomplish mass mind control, then you can create the police state. Then it's much easier to sustain it. Especially once you introduce things like AI and you're able to digitize and autonomize a lot of this stuff, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. But if you want to keep people sustained within it, you need them to be comfortable. That's one of the biggest things. What will shock people out of their stupor, out of their brainwashing, will be being uncomfortable. Unless you use the brainwashing to demonstrate that the reason they're uncomfortable is because of the people who are opting out, who are not participating. Then the people will be your own. Again, you've got control of their mind. They're going to be your police state for you. What this means, though, to me is that the genocide doesn't need to be boxcars and gas chambers. They don't need to go that far. It's like with the Second Amendment. If you've said this is our line, historically, where we draw the line is when you begin segmenting people up by race and loading them onto boxcars and taking them to the gas chamber. Okay, so what that means is that we just have to not do that. We just have to not come take your guns, and then you won't fight us. We just have to not segregate people by their race, load them onto boxcars, and take them to to be gassed in concentration camps. As long as we don't do that, then you're everything's all good. Okay, perfect. So you've just given us our constraints for how we're going to gulag you. And Cyprian has pointed this out, where he said that it's the modern day gulag is not coming and loading you and taking you to a camp. It's just cutting you off from society. It's digitizing society and then removing your permissions to participate in it. And that's what's being created now. So
that's already been written out. Also, I would have to try to find it again. But there's on that World Economic Forum site, there's all this. It's almost like fan fiction. And they write about like the future and stuff like that. And like I would have to try to track it down, or maybe someone else knows what I'm talking about. But there was this portion that was written about like a segment of the population that lives sort of just outside society. And I think it may have been even as specific as, well, that they refused the vaccine and blah blah blah. And it's all this is all written. They've already kind of gone through all this. They're telling you what the deal is. They're not really hiding it. they're being fairly upfront about what the future holds. So it just, if you give them any credence at all, you can have like a rough idea of what you might be planning for if you identify with that group that's kind of outside of the system as it appears that it will be implemented.
Right.
Yeah,
We've
and I
got,
don't. Has anyone gone on that actual site and gone through any of the readings? I'd be interested in the chat. I had a friend who would like send me some segments here
was
and
it
there.
The Friend?
That was The Friend, yeah, and so it just, but like there, I remember reading about the outsiders, and it was just the people that lived outside of this sort of new society. But yeah, that's it's out there.
We got 40 people in the watching live right now. We've got 12 likes on the video, so get the likes up, folks. And
damn, you tell them.
I'm getting my Uncle Hotep on here. Like the damn video. So real quick, we had a question here that was relevant that I wanted to. Let me see if I can get back up here. I got one up on the screen right now from Mac and Liberty. Said, what are your in chat's thoughts on the strategy of we have to wake up as many people as possible rather than building power and influence in a core group? I think this is the key distinction. I think in this. In these circles now, I think this is what people have called it, like post-libertarianism. They're kind of trying to come up with names for the people who are kind of red-pilled beyond the libertarian perspective. And I think this is the key distinction: is understanding that trying to wake up normies is a waste of time. It's completely wasted resources. There is no point. And that instinct, this desire of we have to come up with a solution and we have to apply it to everybody. That is liberalism. That's the liberal mentality. So when you get red-pilled on the Luciferian nature of liberalism, and then your instinct is we need to tell everybody about this, you're revealing the liberalism latent in your mind. And I get this. This happened in the conversation last night. I was doing this in real time. I was kind of thinking through something and I got stuck on a roadblock. I don't remember exactly what the subject was, but I realized, wait a second. We don't need a solution for everyone. We don't have to come up with a solution for everyone because there will be no solution for everyone because not everyone will want a solution. So trying to find a final solution is a waste of time.
How far along are we on this subscribers? We didn't even make it to 950. Right. 924? Yeah.
Are we still at 924?
I would say pump the brakes on any.
I shouldn't say final solution too many times.
Soluciones finales.
So that's what this is my primary argument. Going to be talking to Angela McArdle this week, debating her on Lines of Liberty. I don't know if that's been made public yet, but Angela McArdle and I are going to be debating on Lines of Liberty, hopefully this week, but at some point this month, one of their Lines of Liberty's big debate month they're doing in August. And the premise that we're going to be debating is, do we need another Ron Paul revolution? And I'm saying no, we don't. That's the premise that I'm the one who volunteered that premise, because at first we were kind of talking about like, is the Libertarian Party worth the time or something like that? And it's like, we've had that argument so many times, and I want to zoom out further. I want to say that we don't need another Ron Paul revolution because the first Ron Paul revolution was a failure, and there's no point. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of resources. And this right here is why. Because trying to wake up normies is pointless, is a waste of time. The system doesn't give a shit about the opinion of normies. They're incidental within it. And where we're headed, where we're moving into now, is a point at which dissenting normies are just going to get cut off. They're just going to get wiped out. So you're pulling people into a direction that, like, on a base level of their meat, I think they can sense in the air that departing from the herd right now is dangerous. Whether it's dangerous immediately or if it's going to suddenly become dangerous in the near future, people can sense that. People get that. They just, whether they can explicitly acknowledge it or conceptualize it is another thing, but they can sense that. And ultimately, the majority of people who dissent from the regime are going to suffer. And most of them are probably not going to have a positive outcome. That's just the way that these things go. If you want to dissent from the regime and suffer minimally, the last thing you want to do is get involved in a really loud political campaign that's targeted directly at challenging the regime on its face. That's just strategically speaking, it's not going to produce anything worth the cost that will be incurred by taking that route. And then especially if you don't have anything to direct people into. The only reason that you would ever get involved in a political campaign like that would be if you had something to direct people toward. Come join this thing that you can buy into and we will protect you. We've created a parallel institution. All you have to do is just come join us and let the country do what it's going to do. That's why you would do a political campaign like that. Otherwise, you're just volunteering for the firing squad.
I would disagree because I think they have a nice cloak of invincibility where it's a real diverse group of people of color, and so I don't see any way that the media
no. They have the best ideas. That's what it is. Their ideas are the best ideas. They have the truth on their side.
Yes.
Okay. So, question here
will protect them from getting painted in a particular way by the media,
right?
Their ideas, because probably what's going to happen is like the New York Times is going to write a piece about them. It's going to send it to representatives from the Libertarian Party, and they're probably going to write a letter and they're just going to say, "Hey, this is our piece that we've written up about you and all your white friends with guns, and we really respect your intelligence. You guys are the smartest people ever. So we want your input on the article before we publish it. So just please correct any errors, anything that you feel is a misrepresentation, and we'll incorporate it into the notes, and we'll send you another draft for approval." That's probably how that'll work. We've heard you guys have really good ideas, so we're obviously not going to ignore the best ideas when we're writing an article if we have such an opportunity to get your input.
We're so happy to give you a platform. Like, there's all these news stories going around now of like taking some poor schmuck and being like, look, he posted something on his social media that was anti pharmaceutical product, and now look, he suffered and died. Did you see that? Did you see this guy suffering and dying? He said the wrong thing and then he suffered and died. It's like, it's pathological.
There were articles like that, as early as like March and April of 2020. I remember those, and I remember just jumping in the comments just to see if what I feared was going to be there would actually be there, and yep, totally. But yeah, it's just like people love that opportunity to just. I mean, libertarians like it too. I mean, you love to, as a libertarian, be like, yeah, see, I told you, I knew before other people, I saw this coming. And we even like doing that. But like when you have like this massive amount of momentum and power on your side, where you feel so comfortable as to just like celebrate the death of somebody who, was overheard at a party one time saying he wasn't like worried about COVID or something like, you know what I mean? It's just so it's like, okay, if you can't take, if that's not a bridge too far, for those people, it's just like, is that the farthest bridge? Probably not.
Right?
Yeah, just a little bit of math,
and then further than that, when you're like, I saw this coming, and you're sitting in the gulag next to someone, it's like, well, if you saw this coming, then why the fuck are you here with me?
Fair.
How did you see this coming and not put yourself somewhere where this wouldn't happen to you?
Will you be quiet? I'm trying to scroll through my free ebook of your Facebook friends were wrong about boxcars.
Oh, shout out Tom Woods. He's apparently the the very failed podcaster is suffering from a particularly bad case of pneumonia.
God bless Tom Woods.
God bless Tom Woods, indeed. So we got a question here from my good buddy Jacob, one of the best human beings I've ever known. Really, really good guy, and smart as hell too. So he says, "Sup, gents? Shared big tech right wing counterterrorism database. Yeah, it's not exactly new, more of the same, but seems like a major step. Reflect on that." I saw this come across the wire today. That now all the let me make sure I get the exact thing here. It was on disclose.tv. I subscribe to the Telegram channel of disclose.tv just as a way of kind of like anytime there's some sort of major news event that I need to know about, that'll pop up. They'll get a notification about it, and they don't go crazy with notifications, so it's not too bad. I don't really. I the reason I keep my finger on the pulse of current events is because of this show and also the Wealth, Power, and Influence. Having those two shows and doing them, and like I have to be able to speak intelligibly to what's going on. In general, I think that people have no business being plugged into current events or having like a constant news wire that is updating them. Our psychologically, we aren't equipped to handle that kind of like being aware of every bad thing that's happening around the world all the time.
Well, you regular ass people are not, but really elites like Matthew and I.
I wasn't thinking elites. I was thinking like victims. Like we're victims of the fact that we have to keep up with this shit. So the what was the update? It said
contrast to Donald Jr.'s Telegram channel, which basically is basically like it's like
is that what you use for inspiration?
It's like a heart rate monitor for his drug use. I mean, it's just so.
Is that what you use to like to hone the voice of your Patriot character?
Oh yeah,
Boomer Patriot.
Yeah, no, I guess that is an inspiration. I should probably get back to that Telegram channel for material. Yeah.
Okay, so this is what Jacob was talking about. Facebook, Twitter, Microsoft, YouTube, and other big tech companies will now start to add content to a shared counterterrorism key database aimed to crack down on material from, quote, white supremacists and far-right militias. Now, don't worry.
Here's the thing.
All of them are private companies. So this is just a private database. You don't have to worry. This isn't the state. The state isn't getting your information to use against you. This is just private companies that want to make sure that they only have the people that they want to affiliate themselves with on their platform, which is everyone's right. On their private property, it's your right to only affiliate with just the people you want to be affiliated with. Now, if you're part of the state, that's a big no-no. That's very, very bad. You can't be part of the state and creating databases. If the state started creating databases like this, we would need to get very upset and angrily post on social media. However, it's not the state, so don't worry. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's just private.
I know somewhere like someone's going to read that same description that you gave, and they're
take it entirely seriously.
They're going to no. Like the description of this company and that company are making a database of to monitor far right whatever content, the whole description. I know someone's going to read that. And they're going, by the time when they get to the far right extremism, they're going to wipe their brow and flick sweat off. And they're going to say, thank God. I thought I was in trouble for a minute, but I'm neither left nor right. So there's no way that I can suffer any negative consequences from this. And I will just say, if anyone is listening to this that has that experience, pumpkin pie, you are so fucked. Like, because the sort of underlying kind of like sub conversation that is kind of happening with this whole topic is in terms of like waking people up. It just the people who would maybe need to be woken up. It is not limited to the group of people that you think that it might be, right? Because if we're all like, if you zoom out, and just like look at the word libertarians and paint it with the broadest possible brush, like we're in there, we're in that group, I guess. And if the future is like going to play out how it seems like it's going to, it's like in terms of like waking people up, Um, that's sort of like you're about to be chased by a bear, and like waking people up is would be giving them like a pair of like running shoes, you know. Or you could just like kind of let them flounder, which is more like, hey, I got some shoes for you. All right, you're just gonna need to set your foot in this quickcrete for a little bit. All right.
I was gonna say it's like you're waking them up so that they can watch a video on how dangerous bears are.
There's that. But yeah, I mean, like there's going to be like an order of like people who suffer, you know,
Right.
Unnecessarily, we would argue, and so, like all this stuff with the database, and again, being very loud, and a political party full of white people, and with a lot of guns and stuff like that. That's just like drizzling yourself in honey, and I don't know. Some people are going to want to drizzle themselves in honey. And some people are just at an unfortunate age, where it's just like, yeah, I'm 19 and a half, and drizzling myself in honey seems pretty cool right now to me because I'm 19 and a half,
I'm 19 and a half and I'm invincible.
Right. Someone is going to need to like the bear's going to snack on somebody.
This is a really good point. There will be libertarians out there that will gloat about being on the database as a badge of
like
honor.
a badge
That'll be
of
their
honor.
only achievement.
Totally.
Yep.
Yeah, I've like seen behavior like that. And then the other thing too is just like, I don't know. I really do want it. Like the most like intriguing thing to me is all these people who seem to be behaving as if they're dying to get swatted. It's like, okay. It's like, okay, you're like in your like 20s. It's like, did you do something like real fucked up in your like late teen years that like a federal agent got a hold of you and told you could make some things go away if you just acted like a total fucking psycho online? I mean, because
I can't tell the difference.
Yeah, I really can't. I just wonder. I don't know. It's got to be a few, and I have to be Facebook friends with some of them. But it's like that meme of like the Spider-Man pointing, and there's like 10 Spider-Men, and it's just like Fed, another Fed, federal agent, and then there's one guy, and it's some autistic fuck, and they're all pointing at each other, and it was yeah. So basically, I do kind of wonder with all this behavior, I do wonder just how many of these people may be agitators in some capacity. Just like, did you look at some funny videos, when you were 17, that you weren't supposed to, mister? Did you take videos of a neighbor you weren't supposed to? We can make that go away if you just talk about 3D printing guns and try to get as many Facebook friends as you can. Just a question, just a hunch I have. I don't know.
Reardon said, what is ironic is that Matt could be on the database. I'm sure I'm on the database. I'm like...
Yeah, we're not happy about this.
You're on the database. By being affiliated with us, you're on the database.
Yeah. If spoiler, if Matthew and I thought about this privately for like 20 more minutes, like there's no way that there's a show. There's just no fucking way that there's a show. Like if we did a couple episodes just talking to one another back a couple years ago, we would have been like, yeah, man, this is pretty cool. You want to just make like a signal group?
But we're not smart.
No.
I did a thread here. Let me do this little screen share thing. Oh, real quick. This is basically the same thing you said, but Max said libertarians' response to the database. Oh well, I'm not right wing, so I don't have to worry. The on that just that did it for me.
Yep. 1,000%.
1,000%. Okay, so Chrome tab, this one here. So, while I was listening to, do it this way. While I was listening to that Tragedy and Hope series with Jay Dyer, I was sitting there just kind of thinking about this, and let me make this easier to read. So the first thought that occurred to me is economic interests drive ideological movements. He who controls the money controls the party. So it doesn't matter what the actual party line is. What matters is who's paying people to say the party line. And ultimately it's going to be driven by financial interests. But those financial interests are always going to hang out in the background. And even if people knew who they were, just the way that the human mind works, they're not going to focus on them. People are always going to focus on the people that are the actors in front, who are occupying the role that has been designated to them. And I do think, like with the concept of an egregore that we've talked about on here a couple times, I have come to believe that these kinds of movements, these social movements, are actual manifestations of non-physical entities of some kind. That you can think of an ideology as an actual. You could think of it as a demon if you wanted, or an angel. Like that kind of conceptualization of it. So I think that these sort of movements, when Carl Jung said that people don't have ideas, ideas have people. I think that's a literal truth. That's a literal technical truth. And these movements are actually, that's why they act like NPCs. These movements are people who are possessed by a spirit that is actually motivating them to do and say things because those things will bring about a specific outcome that isn't necessarily concordant with the actual things they say. So one way you can see this is that with communism. So people will refer, say, a libertarian or a conservative or something like that. When they talk about communism, what they're looking at is the actual results of communism. They're looking at what communism looks like when it's applied. When lefties defend communism, what they're defending is the theory. They're defending the utopia, the ideal of what it's supposed to look like, which is like the marketing pitch. So they're defending the marketing pitch, and libertarians and conservatives are criticizing the actual product.
Yeah, it's a good thing that libertarians and conservatives don't do that. Don't do what the commies do.
Exactly. Is exactly where I was going with it. You just flip it right around. Libertarians and conservatives, they defend the ideal without criticizing and they're like completely unaware of the actual product. So libertarians and conservatives defend the marketing pitch and ignore the actual product of libertarianism or conservatism. And communists defend their marketing pitch without looking and ignore the actual outcomes of communism. So you have the word, and then you have the thing that the word means. And to different parties, the word means a different thing. Both have the same end goal. This is part of the whole, they're both wings of liberalism. They both are headed the same direction, which is centralized control of the economy with a global technocracy. They're both going the same direction. They're just taking different paths to get there. Ultimately, those paths. This is the whole thing about it being these being dialectic pairs. They're both going the same direction. It's different. Different marketing pitches are more suitable for different people, but fundamentally, they're rooted in the same premise, which is individualism, materialism, not individualism the way people often think of it, but the idea, more generally speaking, the idea of that the fundamental economic unit is the atomized individual, and it's materialist. These are the characteristics that and they're also internationalist. They're also globalist in the technical sense. Both of them, libertarianism and communism, or capitalism and communism, or conservatism, or all of them, all conceive of themselves as universally applicable. They all say that the ideal is that every single person on the globe participates with this ideal. So our systems have to be universal. That's a key characteristic of liberalism. That's what makes nationalism interesting to me. I still think that nationalism has all of its own issues as well, but nationalism isn't necessarily universal. And this was a key distinction between Trotsky and Stalin, as I understand it. Stalinism was not a universal application of it. Wasn't imperial, at least in the same sense as ordinary communism. Trotskyism was, this has to apply to the entire world, or it will fall apart. Again, all of these things are all universal. So I wrote, the development of the liberal conception of the atomized individual was driven by the merchant class's desire to upend the established order and supplant the monarch class. A world of atomized individuals is much better for business, which means it's ideal for technocracy. So this was the part here. The purpose of revolutionary Marxist movements is to undermine the existing state order to create a pretext for eliminating waste and inefficiency. So you have waste and inefficiency in the system that causes bad outcomes. People revolt against that, and the revolution is immediately controlled. When a revolutionary movement is being fomented, specific leaders are put into positions of responsibility and authority within the revolutionary movement by the same people who finance and support and back the regime. They immediately take financial control of the leaders of the movement so that they control and direct the direction of the movement. In Tragedy and Hope, he points out that the French Revolution was financed by Swiss bankers. Swiss bankers were the ones financing it. That's what's public. I'm sure there were other bankers who were financing it as well. But these aren't organic movements that just evolve in pursuit of some great abstract principle. These are movements that are created specifically for a specific purpose. They're funded for a specific purpose. Libertarianism is the same. Libertarianism is within the Overton window. It's within the 3x5 card of allowable opinion, specifically because it's so useful. This doesn't mean that individual libertarians are powerful. It's the opposite. They're useful idiots, especially anarchists. The regime loves having anarchists around because it's such a valuable tool for them. They're ultimately pawns that are used to facilitate this dialectic process that moves us ever more into this institution of a globalized technocracy. So this is, I'm trying to strike at the heart of this tendency of people to defend their own marketing pitch while ignoring their actual product that they're selling. So I said championing the fight against communist tyranny by advocating for free markets is like championing the fight against committing suicide by jumping into a cage full of hungry wolves. I didn't commit suicide. I put myself in a position where I was guaranteed to die. I didn't facilitate the rise of communist tyranny. I just promoted the environment that most enabled it. This is the outcome of so-called free markets. It doesn't matter what you think about them as an ideal. A free market is a suit to be worn by someone who is motivated to create a global technocracy. When you talk about free markets, what you're talking about is creating the foundation for communist tyranny. Communist tyranny can't be effectuated except by starting with a free market. You have to have the free market, because what the free market means is that there are no powerful institutions in control of the market. The market is free. Free means it can be picked up by anyone. Anyone who wants to buy it can do so. The market will always be purchased. It's just a matter of who's going to purchase it. And in a liberal, in a world post the development of liberalism, there's going to be communists, and not communists who defend the marketing pitch, communists who defend the product, who want the product, because they're the ones who stand to benefit from the existence of the product. They will always be there to buy your market. So when you think free market, think of what you would associate free with. Normally, if you heard of a free product, anyone can take it, and they're going to. They're going to scoop up the entire market. It's not going to stay free. This is one of the values of a monarchy. You take it for granted that there's going to be centralized control of the market, because there will always be centralized control of the market. And you put it in a position where it's formal, it's explicit, it's obvious. Everyone knows who controls the market. Everyone knows who's responsible for the market. This is the this is the red pill from zooming out further than 1600. to do your historical political analysis, to understand what the economy, what the sociocultural trends are. Like this is where your mind has to get before you can start actually conceptualizing a legitimate solution to building the ark. When you understand the storm that you're going to have to weather, the storm is coming. When you understand the storm that you're going to have to weather, then you can build the ark. Because then you're actually building something that's designed for the circumstances that you're moving into, rather than this, hypothetical ideal that
possession.
Right. Yeah. So this hypothetical ideal that's not gonna, that doesn't actually have any basis in reality.
I like how this whole thing is basically, like, everything you said was pretty on point, but it's basically just don't let him fool you, folks. A humble brag to show that he has 13 notifications. That's pretty much all that was about. Like, I've got to go teach some dance, all 13 fans, but it's great to see you as always.
I've got some stuff I have to do too, so I should probably peace out here as well. Really appreciate you guys in the chat today. It was.
You want to make sure you head over to palomaverdecbd.com and use promo code KING for 25% off of your order.
Bingo. And like and share and subscribe. Do all that stuff for us. We appreciate you guys. We appreciate you showing up and letting us rant at you. And we will be back here again on, what's today? Monday. We'll be back here again on Thursday, probably around the same time, 1:30, 2, something like that.
Somewhere in there. You turn on that goddamn notification bell. You don't have to ask us these questions.
Exactly. And if you get us to 1,000 subscribers, then
supporting listeners group.
Supporting listeners group for some more members. And we've got some fun stuff coming. So thank you guys for supporting us. Thank you guys for being here and for doing the show with us. And we will see you guys next time.